Djibouti, a small but extremely strategically located country in the Horn of Africa, they have the remarkable distinction of being the only country in the entire world that plays host to both US and Chinese military bases. How awkward. In fact, the two bases are so close together that they could play footsie with each other, only separated by 11 kilometers or a quick 17-minute drive.
Since 2002, we've seen Djibouti become the focal point for various foreign military powers, including the US, France, and China. So part of the reason why I wanted to make today's episode is to find out if these two have been able to peacefully coexist so close to each other, or if there's been some friction. Both the United States and China are now competing for favor with the nation. Since 2009, China has been Djibouti's largest trading partner. The nation is now heavily indebted to China through their Belt and Road Initiative.
But how did the country become host to so many foreign militaries that are often at odds with one another? And why has hundreds of millions of dollars from these foreign militaries not translated into improved living conditions for the local population in Djibouti? I'm your average infantryman, Cappy. Slap the like and subscribe button, and let's find out. Today's video is sponsored by Growth School, an online learning platform named LinkedIn's top startup that partners with some of the world's leading instructors to create high-impact, career-focused lesson programs. One of the biggest threats to careers and businesses is the possibility of getting replaced by AI and ChatGPT. Companies like Google, Amazon, Apple are laying off thousands of people right now. To be irreplaceable, you need to learn AI and ChatGPT technologies. That's why I'm recommending Growth School's 3-hour workshop in AI for free. In it, you'll uncover tools and hacks to use with ChatGPT, Midjourney, and over 10 other AI tools. It's a paid workshop, but for the first 1,000 viewers who register using the link in the description, it's free. Plus, everyone who signs up will receive a bonus worth $500. It's really a no-brainer, especially when it's free for the first 1,000 people. Growth School has already taught more than 1 million people, so whether you're in the tech industry, a student, a freelancer, or CEO, their career-focused workshop has the power to enhance your existing skills. Register for free using the link in the description. But despite its valuable location, Djibouti still faces some major challenges. About half its population is affected by food insecurity, 19% live in extreme poverty, sanitation and access to potable water is very low. They have almost no industry or export, and its population of less than 1 million has a life expectancy that's lower than the world's average. But the rise in importance of seaborne trade after World War II and globalization gave their country more value. Because if you want to secure this important maritime strait, you have two options. You could do it either from Yemen or Djibouti. And with all that's going on in Yemen, with their unresolved civil war and violence, it's really not a hard choice.
So which major powers use this as an opportunity to move in and help with those security concerns? And what are their combat capabilities? Tell us about their real goals in the region. Is China really there just to help against pirates like they claimed? And is the US military really there to fight against terrorism? Let's take a look.
There are 8 to 11 foreign military bases in Djibouti, depending on which source you check. Some bases are used by a country and its allied forces. That's why there's no unique answer to the question. Also, the bases are mostly located in close proximity to one another, which creates some friction and tricky espionage scenarios. The oldest and one of the most important foreign presence in Djibouti is France, of course. Despite Djibouti's independence in 1977, the French never really ended their military presence there. In fact, they've remained friends with benefits. The French base in Djibouti is the largest of 8 French naval bases outside France, and it's managed by the Djibouti Defense Base Support Group. France is currently negotiating a new treaty with its former colony to keep the base and determine the extent of their presence in the African country. After all, 70% of French imports and 15% of French hydrocarbon requirements transit through these shores. So not only history, but also economic ties make France Djibouti's oldest and most stable ally. The French provide help to Djibouti in many ways, including their territorial disputes with Ethiopia and Eritrea. The defense of Djibouti is largely entrusted to the French. In exchange for a $40 million annual rent and their protection, Djibouti allows France to conduct and support all kinds of operations, including both war and peace, safety and counterterrorism missions, training and combat. As the French Colonel Olivier Saunier once said, "We have unequal freedom of action and training here." And he's not wrong. I mean, French even coordinated all international military air activities in Djibouti, so not a bad deal for France.
However, after decades of these two having a close relationship, Djibouti has started to look elsewhere for their security concerns. Because starting in 2001, after the September 11th attacks, the United States arrived.
Take a look at Camp Lemonnier.
Lemonnier.
It's the United States military base that they've operated since 2002, and it's the only permanent US military base in all of Africa. The US pays $63 million per year, and it's essentially rent to maintain their presence. According to an article written on greydynamics.com by Alex Smith, Max Goldstein, and Neil Singh, this base provides maritime naval responses to local security concerns. This means you've got your patrol-style platforms that have only limited open water capabilities. The article does a great job of outlining US combat power here. They report about 500 Marines are stationed here, with 16 Osprey helicopters, each capable of carrying an entire platoon into battle. Another important capability located here is 14 of the C-130 Hercules transport aircraft and KC-135 refuelers, which reveal how important this location is for logistics in the region. The facility originally belonged to the French, but was expanded later on from 88 acres to nearly 500 acres today. The Gray Dynamics article analysis goes on to state that the United States base in Djibouti has undergone extensive development recently, with the addition of new residential and recreational areas as well as flight facilities.
Shabelle Airfield is located just southwest of Camp Lemonnier, and it's where US drone operations are launched from. Although my understanding is the agreement with Djibouti is that US forces are not allowed to launch attacks into Yemen from there. And even the Houthis inside Yemen seem to have an unofficial agreement with Djibouti to not attack any US or any other type of bases inside the country, even though they're within range. One of the possible reasons that's given for why Houthis aren't attacking US military bases in Djibouti is because they're holding off due to Djibouti's support for Palestine. Or it's a red line they don't want to cross. The US isn't taking any chances though, because reportedly they're sending a new Patriot missile air defense system to guard against any potential attacks.
This airfield has also been built up over the past few years, as seen by satellite images. Thanks to the major expansion of facilities here that ended in 2013, the base can now support US forces over 5,000 service personnel, according to the Pentagon. But the base is likely limited to responding to combat situations within 500 miles. The Welcome Aboard package states that the mission of the base is to enable joint warfighters operating forward into the strengthened host nation relationships. But that's just an extremely simplified vision of the multifaceted strategy of the United States and the significant military presence in Djibouti. The base supports 32 tenant commands and serves as a launching point for counterterrorism operations into places like Somalia and Yemen. It's a hub for intelligence gathering and a platform for regional stability efforts. The base also allows for quick deployments, like the recent one that we saw in April 2023, when a company of US Special Forces launched on helicopters from Djibouti's base and evacuated 100 personnel from the US Embassy in Sudan. We have a pretty good idea of what the US military is up to in Djibouti and what they want to be there for, but far more mysterious is China's goals and ambitions here. Because since late 2008, China has had an almost continuous 3-ship counter-piracy task force in the Gulf of Aden, protecting their maritime trade here. However, unlike the US, China decided to first arrive in Djibouti not as an armed force, but, wait for it, a quote-unquote economic investor. They would call their military base there a logistics facility. I love semantics in diplomacy. In 2016, when the lease was first announced publicly, China's then foreign ministry spokesman, Hong Li, said, quote, "The logistics facilities in Djibouti will enable the Chinese troops to better fulfill escort missions and make new contributions to regional peace and stability." Between 2012 and 2020, Beijing invested in the region almost $14 billion in telecommunications, port facilities, railways, and construction, aligning itself with the ambitions of the local governments and lending money like there's no tomorrow. These investments were also joined by an increase in Chinese companies and citizens in the region. Eventually, 2/3 of Djibouti's external debt was owned by China. And of course, these interests justified the construction of a mammoth $590 million base, occupying 90 acres, next to the Chinese-built Delori multipurpose port, just 6 miles away from the US military base. Inaugurated in 2017, it became the People's Liberation Army's first ever overseas military base. It's rumored to have 3 underground floors and can accommodate up to 10,000 troops, but the current deployment is far from that, between 1,000 and 2,000 soldiers stationed there currently. There are also rumors that Western military stationed in Djibouti call it Jabba the Hutt's palace, because it bears a striking resemblance to the film's location. Personally, I wish the Department of Defense in the United States put a little more pizzazz into their buildings, honestly, because everything from barracks to headquarters look like a DMV building, and it's a little depressing. In 2017, then General Waldhauser spoke to Breaking Defense about the development when it was still fresh, and he said, quote, "We've never had a base of, let's just say a peer competitor as close as this one happens to be, so there's a lot of learning going on, a lot of growing going on," which is a very diplomatic way of saying this feels really freaking awkward and weird. China pays somewhere between $20 and $100 million each year to maintain their military base. They claim it's for non-military activities. China's base here has recently grown and been reinforced with mechanized infantry and armor assets. These kind of weapons are beyond the scope of their claimed counter-piracy mission in the region. Its dock is reportedly capable of accommodating aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. Add to this the rumors of China building a new location in Guinea in West Africa, and one could start to sound like an alarmist. But have there really been any problems between China and US military personnel stationed here? US Army General Stephen Townsend, who took control and command in 2019, said, quote, "There's not a lot of tension really. They actually run into each other at various engagement activities. They're around Djibouti City, and in the past they've actually assisted one another. There was a fire at the city dump actually. We responded and we found ourselves fighting alongside Chinese firefighters. So it looks like the two are learning to coexist."
Or are they? Was that just a general being diplomatic? Because the Small Wars Journal and several other sources, including the Washington Times, stated that a senior US military intelligence officer has said that the Chinese military is guilty of irresponsible actions towards American forces stationed at Djibouti. Rear Admiral Heidi Berg, who's the director of intelligence at the US Africa Command, said that China tried to constrain international airspace by barring aircraft from flying over the military base, flashed ground-based lasers directly into the eyes of American pilots, and deployed their own drones designed to interfere with US flight operations. But that's not even the weirdest part, because the admiral goes on to say that the Chinese personnel tried intrusion activity against the base, which means they either tried to break into the base physically or through possibly cyber attacks. But to be fair, China's made their own official complaints against US military activity here. So they've complained about low-flying US aircraft near their base, which they say has been conducting espionage operations.
But I don't think China's military presence here is even the biggest strategic move on their part. The more major movement here appears to be their economic investments into Djibouti that no one else seems willing to make due to human rights concerns. Remember that imperial railway that France helped build that connected Ethiopia with the port of Djibouti back in like 1894, if I remember correctly? It stopped working in 2004 due to a lack of spare parts and maintenance, so China swooped in and invested $3.4 billion to upgrade and fix the railroad and other infrastructure. This cut down travel time from 3 days to 12 hours. In 2021, Chinese merchant group, China's biggest port operator, signed a $350 million investment deal with Great Horn Investment Holding to transform the port of Djibouti into a global commercial hub. Djibouti's president, Ismail Guelleh, has been characterized as a dictator with a poor record on human rights issues. He's been in power since 1999 all the way up to today. This is part of the reason why Western organizations that would normally invest billions of dollars into a country like this and help their infrastructure have been markedly absent here. However, China has less qualms with investing in an authoritarian country. So with all this income from foreign militaries and their geopolitical importance, why is it that their people face 60% unemployment and 19% food insecurity? A 2006 report by the International Federation for Human Rights noted, quote, "Djibouti is a rich country, but Djiboutians are poor," end quote. This is because their president Guelleh has decided to govern through poverty and force. Guelleh has a hold on the country's resources. According to peoplesworld.org, he maintains absolute control over state power. A note from the US diplomatic mission put it this way: Djibouti is less a country than a commercial city-state controlled by a man, Ismail Omar Guelleh.
It's awful, but experts say France, the United States, and China all look past the dictatorial tendencies of the leader there and the poor living conditions of the people, because having a military base is so important to them.
China's military real estate developments in Djibouti also opened the appetite of other ambitious investors. You got Saudi Arabia set to be next door neighbors, and both Russia and India have also started to look for locations to build their own bases. Djibouti's president has said that he doesn't see a problem with hosting different world powers, but the OG original bases aren't happy. You see, when you're talking about prime real estate, location goes hand in hand with exclusiveness, and Djibouti's getting a bit crowded. It's like a massive game of Monopoly, where all key players are trying to buy the best properties. But for now, there's no better place than Djibouti.
And before you go, I want to tell you about force multipliers. Not these. 1 + 1 = 3. Or get your own prescription for a JDAM airstrike, unlimited refills. I worked with a great artist to create these shirts, like the correct way to pronounce nuclear. I've got all your favorite military buzzwords like lethality. And some of my favorites are the Spare Parts Army and Average Infantryman shirt. So click the link in the description or check out the shirts below the video.